All right, so get this. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a story about Melania Trump.
Sounds intriguing. What's the scoop?
Well, it all revolves around her upcoming memoir, The World of Book Publishing, and of course, a little bit of politics thrown in for good measure.
You had me at memoir.
Right. So we've got this CNN article, and it really kind of pulls back the curtain on what goes on behind the scenes leading up to a major book release.
Oh, I love a good behind-the-scenes look. What's the big reveal?
Well, it seems like there might be more to this memoir than meets the eye. Apparently, CNN was interested in interviewing Melania. Standard procedure for a book like this.
Makes sense. Get the author out there promoting their work.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. CNN was allegedly asked to pay a rather hefty sum for the interview, $250,000 to be exact.
Wait, are you serious? $250,000 just to interview Melania Trump?
That's what the article claims.
Yeah.
And get that, it wasn't even just for the interview itself. The publisher was bundling it with access to photos and excerpts from the book.
Wow, that's something else. I mean, I know access to these high-profile figures comes with a price tag, but that seems a bit steep even for a former first lady.
Right. And it really makes you think about the implications, especially considering who we're talking about here.
Exactly. This isn't just any author trying to drum up publicity. We're talking about the spouse of a former president, someone who still holds significant sway in the political landscape.
Exactly. So their actions, even something as seemingly simple as a book release, take on a whole new level of significance. It makes you wonder if this is a one-off situation or a sign of a larger trend.
I'm inclined to think it's more the latter. This whole thing feels very calculated, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So what happened after CNN got this unusual request? Did they just cough up the cash?
Well, you'll have to wait and see what happens after the break.
So did CNN end up forking over the $250,000?
For all the intrigue, they actually declined.
Probably a good call for their budget.
Right, but here's the kicker. She did a bunch of interviews leading up to the book launch.
Oh. With who? Spill the tea.
All of them were with Fox News.
Interesting. And did Fox News pay a king's ransom for their sit-down?
They've stated on record that no money exchanged hands for those interviews.
Now that's what I call a plot twist.
Yeah.
It almost seems deliberate, like a strategic media play.
Right. It makes you wonder about the thought behind choosing those outlets. Understanding Melania's public image and her connections to different media outlets is key here.
It's like choosing where to place your bets, aiming for maximum impact with a specific audience.
Exactly. And this is where it gets even juicier. Remember that CNN article we talked about Melania getting a hefty speaking fee from a log cabin Republicans event?
Yeah, the $237,500 one, right?
That's the one. And there was another $250,000 speaking fee for a similar event back in 2022.
Hold on, so she's demanding $250,000 from CNN, but then doing these other events for a similar fee.
Well, it wasn't a demand from CNN, more like a dot suggestion. But yeah, it does add another layer to the story, doesn't it? It suggests a history of aligning with certain political groups, maybe even leveraging her platform for, shall we say, a little financial boost.
So let me get this straight. We have a hefty interview fee request from CNN, exclusive interviews with Fox News, and past speaking fees from politically aligned groups. It's like a political thriller with a dash of financial intrigue.
It really is. And it brings up some serious questions about the intersection of politics, media, and you guessed it, money. On the one hand, you've got the question of a former first lady, especially one whose husband might be eyeing another presidential run, requesting large sums for interviews or appearances. Is this just a public figure cashing in on their name? Or are we talking about some ethical quandary about money influencing access to information and political discourse?
It's like everyone's playing 4D chess, and we're just trying to figure out the rules of the game.
Well put. And it's not just about Melania or her book. This whole situation begs the question, how much should we pay for access to information? Remember, paying for interviews is usually frowned upon in journalism for a reason.
Right. It can muddy the waters of journalistic integrity, create some iffy conflicts of interest. It's like paying for a good review. It undermines the whole system.
Exactly. And with social media and the 24/7 news cycle, it's harder than ever to navigate these murky waters.
It's like trying to find a lighthouse in a storm of tweets and sound bites.
And that brings us to another head-scratcher, the curious case of Melania's silence on the campaign trail. The article mentioned she's been keeping a low profile, but then, bam, she pops up in a video on X talking about, what else? Individual freedom for women.
The timing's impeccable, isn't it? Just as her book's about to hit the shelves, it's like a well-rehearsed stage whisper designed to catch everyone's attention.
Right. Makes you think about the intention behind it all, her way of shaping her public image, reconnecting with a certain audience.
It's like a carefully choreographed dance, isn't it? Every move, every word, strategically placed to elicit a specific response.
That's the game, my friend, and it highlights just how important media literacy is in this day and age. We have to be able to see through the smoke and mirrors, look beyond the surface, and figure out the motivations and potential biases at play.
Because at the end of the day, knowledge is power, but only if you know how to sift the real from the spin.
Couldn't agree more. It's like they say, don't believe everything you read on the internet or hear in a political interview for that matter.
It's like you said earlier, this whole thing feels very calculated. The timing of that video with this message about individual freedom, right as her book is coming out, it seems awfully deliberate.
Oh, absolutely. And it plays right into a much larger strategy. She's aligning herself with particular values, picking and choosing her media outlets, really tailoring her message to hit home with a certain audience.
It's really fascinating when you think about it, how public figures can use these platforms and tactics to craft their own narratives.
It really is. And for the rest of us, it highlights how important media literacy really is. With so much information out there, we've got to be able to decode these strategies, look past the surface, and figure out the motivations, the potential biases underneath it all.
So as we sort of wrap up our deep dive into Melania Trump's memoir, what are the key takeaways? What should our listeners be thinking about?
Well, I think this whole situation really underscores how much the media landscape, how we access information, is changing. We used to have these clear-cut lines between news and entertainment and personal branding, but now it's
Yeah.
all blurring together. And those financial incentives driving everything are just getting more and more complicated.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure.
It is, it is. And as people who consume information every day, we've got to be discerning, question our sources, think about the motivations behind what we're reading and watching, really engage critically.
It's like that saying, follow the money. It seems more relevant now than ever, especially when it comes to the news.
You hit the nail on the head. If we can understand the financial incentives behind media narratives, we can become savvier, more informed consumers.
This has been a real eye-opener, wouldn't you say? We started with a seemingly straightforward book release, and we've ended up in this vast conversation about the media, political strategies, and the sway of public perception.
It just goes to show you these issues are all interconnected. And in our world, with everything becoming so complex, critical thinking is more crucial than ever.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've given everyone listening today a lot to mull over. Any final thoughts?
I think the biggest takeaway here is simple. Be aware of the forces shaping the information you're taking in. Melania Trump's memoir, the media frenzy around it, it all proves that things aren't always what they seem. We've got to ask critical questions, be wary of potential biases, seek out diverse viewpoints. That's how we become more informed, more empowered to understand the truth, the influence, the power of narratives in our digital world.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave our listeners with this. When information itself is a currency, it's up to each of us to decide its true worth.